Welcome back to the Nomadic Nurse Podcast. I'm your host, Melanie, and we're here to bring you towards faith, freedom, and the courage to build, whether it's in your job, your life, whatever the desire is that God has given you. So today we're going to talk about the experience of working in the ER. Now, y'all know that I'm a nurse. Y'all know I've been working in this for about 13. We're going on 14 years, I guess, soon. ER is something I've been doing for a long time. I did take a break and became a manager for a little bit, but we're going to chat more about the learning process of the ER. We're going to be talking about the growing pains, the untold stories of what it's like to work in the ER. Now, the thing is that we talk all the time about how interesting this case may be, or this is cool, or that is cool, but I want to ask you something. When was the last time that you actually felt something? I'm not talking about feeling when it comes down to patients. Oh, that's exciting, the adrenaline rush. I'm not talking about that type of feeling. I'm talking about feelings at home, where you sat with yourself and you're like, I just did CPR on this patient and I don't feel okay about it. Not because your lack of confidence of your skills. Pull aside the professional component. Pull aside the fact that did you do your charting or not? Pull back from the whole professional component of it for 1 second. I want to talk about the emotional toil that it takes when you're working in healthcare. And I'm specifically talking about the ER because that's my experience. This could relate to you if you worked in another department, you come from another profession. But I want to ask you, when was the last time you felt something? I was recently inspired because I was watching, something came up on my YouTube on the news in the US where Jacksonville, Florida, a police officer, his team got a call that there was a gentleman that was about to jump and self-harm. And the thing is that what we need to be very aware of is those types of situations, it's exceptionally burdening on the soul for the person that's on the other end, that wants to do the act, and there's the person that's trying to save the other person. And then there's the people watching. What I noticed with this is that this police officer took 40 minutes to calm this patient down, to calm this person down, I should say, and reel him in and get him to not continue with the act. The way he did that was posted on the media clip. And he was so compassionate and so kind. And they only showed like 30 seconds of it, but he did say that it lasted about 40 minutes. He grabbed the gentleman in, he got him to a safe location, and he gave him a big hug. And the things that he did in that moment was he spoke to him, got to know him. Now, I want to make it clear, it's not always going to go down this way. I want to talk about the approach of the police officer. The police officer's approach was kindness, gentleness, love, patience, self-control, and the list goes on. That is what we call the fruit of the Spirit. Now, I'm going to open up the Bible because the Lord knows. We are going to open up, I have a couple of things tagged here today. Okay, I want to go to Galatians 5 and verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things. Now those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking of one another, envying one another. Amen. Now, the reason why I'm putting emphasis on this is because I've recently learned in my walk that I need to develop my fruits of the Spirit. And keep in mind, this sounds all fine and dandy when you read it. It's not easy to develop your fruits of the Spirit. It's not. Especially all of them at the same time, my child. Very challenging indeed. Very, very, very challenging. It's something that we all, as Christians and as people, we should all strive to be. What's wrong with this statement? Like, if you're not a Christian, tell me, there shouldn't be anything wrong with having love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. What's wrong with those? Don't you want those? I want those, Christian or not. I think those are great qualities to have. I rest my case. Now, the thing is, what I find exceptionally important is that cop displayed that to that person that wanted to unalive himself. And he came in and he listened. Now, again, this may not always be the outcome, but if you displayed the fruit of the Spirit in the best way you possibly can, and it was considered unsuccessful or even successful, the fact that you're able to display the fruits of the Spirit is already amazing. And miracles can come through that. but also it requires the other person to receive it as well, to see that as well, right? So you cannot control another person's actions, but you can reflect being a good person amongst many other things. How I like to say is you can reflect Christ through these fruits. This is a way you can show these fruits. I want to make something very clear. I have recently learned that there are times that I do not reflect the fruits of the Spirit. I don't reflect it sometimes at all. And I'm admitting this to you because I'm sure there's somebody on the other side of this I'm sure there's somebody that doesn't feel that they reflect this at all as well. I'm on that journey right now. Now, I'm not saying I don't reflect it at any shape, size, or form. I'm saying that reflecting the fruits of the Spirit is exceptionally hard, and there are times that I don't reflect it at all. Times. Because now those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. There are times that I'm in Christ, but I still battle with my passions and desires that belong to the flesh. I still battle with that. And I've recently come to the conclusion, I've investigated, I'm not sure if it's necessarily a conclusion, but the Holy Spirit's led me to this, that I struggle with this in the workplace. Now, ask me to do CPR, ask me to run a code with you, ask me to handle a code, ask me to get things done in the workplace, ask me to do my skills, to do my charting, to do all the things a nurse should be doing. That's great. But one of the things that we tend to lack is we forget within all those things that we have to do that make us a good nurse, we lack the quality of caring. And I think that based on my education, it actually reflects in here. And it's funny because what we don't realize is that having a compassionate heart, an empathetic heart, having these fruits of the Spirit can actually be very healing to a patient. It can lead to a positive outcome for a patient because it'll give them faith to heal again. And I'm going to tell you why this happened. Let's go into the breakdown of how did I end up this way? Listen, I'm somebody where I'm very aware that I'm exceptionally passionate, I'm intense, and I'm aware that sometimes I can be extremely direct. These things did not grow overnight. These things definitely came as I got closer to the job. When I was a nursing student, I was a very big people pleaser. I still kind of carry those traits today. I'm working on it. The Lord is working on me, but it's a lot better than what it was in nursing school. I had a huge people pleasing trait. There were certain parts of me that lacked wisdom in the every street cred, I guess street smarts, if you want to put it that way. I was very innocent and I was naive. But at the same time, I had a lot more love, joy, peace, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control at times. That one was hard at that time of my life. It was hard. However, self-control, obviously as a nurse, you have to have self-control, but there was a part of the self-control that unhinged. And this was anger. Yeah. I would get angry far too quickly. I lacked patience far too quickly, which led me to lose love. I lost peace, I lost kindness, I lost goodness, and gentleness and faithfulness. It all trickles down. So it's almost like a domino effect. If you have a rotten part on one fruit, you'll most likely rotten the others. And that domino effect made me realize that my fruit bank in these areas are low. I'm going to tell you a different version of the untold stories of the ER. Now, these fruits of the Spirit, I'm bringing myself back, and I want to bring you back to that. Whether you are a healthcare professional, a police officer, somebody that's been through a lot in life, I want you to keep in mind of Galatians 5:22 to 26. I want you to keep that close to your heart throughout the rest of this episode. And I want you to remember how your everyday job or your things that you've been through in your life and how that trauma can lead you to losing your fruits, okay? So when it comes down to me, my first CPR that I did on a patient was a gentleman. I remember his age. He was 77 years old. This was years and years ago. 77 years old. He just came back from a cardiac bypass. After his bypass surgery, he stayed at the hospital for how much time he needed. He was discharged, and then a week after his discharge, he showed up in my hospital with a cardiac arrest. I'm doing CPR on this guy. He has fresh sutures and staples on his chest. I got to do CPR on him. What do you think is going to happen? I'm pounding on his chest the way I learned. And his chest was not only breaking from the inside, but also it was breaking from the outside. Why? Because the staples were flying everywhere. Imagine that is your first time doing CPR on a patient. Do you think I was normal at 21 years old going home thinking about that? No. Listen, it's not a gunfight, a knife fight. It's not anything like that. But I mean, I literally almost went into, literally caved into his chest. Now, I know it's very graphic, but you need to understand the gravity of that and how the apathy came in, how the hardening of my heart came in, how the rotting of my fruits came in. And here's the thing. What will happen is that as you're doing your job, you will see things that are not normal to the human eye, especially when I started at 21, at a very young age. Who is trusting a 21-year-old to do CPR in a trauma room? I was trained, don't get me wrong, but think about it. We're gonna tap more into this a little later on. So that was my first encounter. I wanna be very clear that this is setting the reality of the ER. It's not to tell you shouldn't work in the ER. I love the ER, I still work in the ER today. But the one thing that you have to understand is that you have to, one, guard your heart, but you also have to find rest. Here's a statement that I can really relate to that's written here. I thought the caring was a skill I brought to the job. I didn't know the job was going to work very hard, very systemically, over a long period of time to train it out of me. If I can teach you right now to learn this or unlearn your old habits today, please do it. Because I love working in the ER, but I have a lot of unlearning to do when it comes down to the caring aspect. You can ask me to run a code and do all those fancy things that a nurse can do. But the heart that I have is so traumatized that it's hardened that my fruits are not showing. I want to prevent that for you now. Now, one of the things that I want to emphasize here, if we back up a little bit, is that I always loved ER. ER was something that I loved for a very, very long time. It was something that I always aspired to go into. I used to watch the show ER back in the 90s when I was a kid, and I always loved it. I always knew that this was something that I was gonna do, and it was something that I knew I was jumping into the Shark Tank. I understood the weight of the job, but what I didn't understand was how to deal with that weight. That is the difference. I think if you want to work in ER, but understand the weights and how you need to process that weight. And this goes for every single department, every single profession, and every single thing that you sign up for. Does it make sense to you? Is it something that you can handle? Now, this can be very small decisions to very big decisions, right? But you always have to, anything comes with a cost. Nothing in this world is 100% guaranteed. Nothing. And I think if we understand that component, that nothing in this world is 100% guaranteed, and everything comes with a cost, it'll make it so much easier for us to understand of weighing the pros and the cons in our lives rather than making poor decisions. One of the things that I emphasize I love is in the book of Proverbs. Proverbs is the book that will check you so quickly. So here it says in Proverbs 3, Verse 7, it says, don't be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. This is the healing for your body and strengthening for your bones. Honor the Lord with your possessions, with the first produce of your entire harvest. And then your barns will be completely filled and your vasts will overflow with wine. I really want to emphasize that my faith played a huge role in understanding what was wrong with me. Now, that's why a lot of people kind of steer away from faith or kind of get scared, is because it opens up a wound, and that it opens up Pandora's box that they're not willing to open. And it's surprising to me how many people are not willing to open it up. Me, as soon as I realize that, I'm like, is there something wrong with me? And I have to open up Pandora's box. I take a breath and I open it. What do I got to deal with? Because I don't want to be like this. And I think that's very, very important. Accountability for understanding how imperfect you are and how it can affect people is very important, but also understand in the process that you're not going to be perfect. Like I said, not 100% guaranteed. Weigh the pros and the cons, weigh all of these things. But opening Pandora's box for you may also be a timing thing. It will have to happen. That is 100% guaranteed, but it's a matter of timing. As I'm going through the ER and in love with running the traumas, in love with being in codes and working in teams in critical situations. Like, it is such an adrenaline rush. I remember when I was working on basically a code orange, which is external disaster. And these people came in with gunshot wounds. And when we got this in, me and my colleague, we just finished running a huge situation and we hadn't eaten yet. It's a night shift. We're exhausted. And then my colleague comes around the corner and he says, "You're about to get like 6 GSWs." And I was like, which is also known for gunshot wounds. And I was like, "You're joking." This is the guy that usually jokes a little bit. He looked at me with the straightest face. He's like, "No, we're about to get 6 GSWs and possibly more casualties." I'm like, okay. And the machine was in operation. We got teams in order. We called all the surgeons in. We called all the OR team. We called everybody. We got people moving. It was wild. And it was an adrenaline rush. And it was so cool. It was so amazing to be a part of that. But also, I forgot that it was not cool for the patients. Here's the thing that we forget. The first thing that we get hardwired into our brain, especially as students, is that take advantage of the opportunity. Go learn something. You gotta change an ostomy, you gotta change a Foley, you gotta change an IV, you gotta change whatever. You're gonna go watch a procedure, go watch it. Take advantage of the opportunity. Now, nursing students go get giddy. I'm not sure about med students, I'm sure it's a similar thing, but you're going to see a procedure. Oh, it's gonna be interesting and whatever. But you gotta remember, this is the thing that not many people teach us. Or a lot of teachers miss the mark on this, and we have to be accountable for it. It's not necessarily their fault per se, but I want to be clear. The thing that you find interesting may be the patient's worst nightmare. Let that sink in. I would be so excited for certain things to happen, like when I would see procedures or there would be a code, I'd be, yes, cool, interesting, fun. And it'd be the dopamine hit, but then you'd forget that there's a patient on the other side of that. And I missed that mark young, and that carried with me for a long time. And that unlearning is a lot harder than you think. Oh, well, now we got to care. That adrenaline rush of when you have a code, that adrenaline rush when you're dealing with those types of things, it's heavy. It's a lot. It's mania sometimes. And for some people, depending. And people will be like, "Oh, I'm cool as a cucumber. It's okay." Check on those friends. Check on those colleagues. The reason why I think that it's not normal, to a certain degree it's not normal, because the things that you vicariously go through with that patient, the amount of things that you see patients go through that probably give you adrenaline rush, that probably are so interesting to you, are not normal to see on the human eye. For example, the gunshot wounds that I saw, it's not normal to see that many. Listen, they weren't all dead coming in. All of them survived. But the thing is that when you get 6+ victims coming in of gunshot wounds, and just with you experiencing that, technically that's not normal for the human eye to experience. Yes, we're nurses and we signed up for the job. That's not what I'm saying. But again, weight. The weight of that, the weight of the job, you must understand the cost. Do you really want to become apathetic to that situation? Think about it. Do you want to be apathetic? Do you want the experience that you're going to have as a healthcare professional that is going to be so cool, so interesting, or you're going to be cool as a cucumber? Make sure that you understand the weight of what you're signing up for and if you can handle it and how are you going to handle it. For me, I go to therapy once a month. For years, I've been doing that. And it ain't going to change. If I still work in an ER, that's what I will be doing. Thank you very much. Because it is not normal to be seeing so many patients coming in critical situations, whether it be somebody taking their life, whether it be a cardiac arrest, whether it be someone with a bad pneumonia, whether it be elder abuse, whether it be a domestic abuse. Trust me, and I've seen them all in one shift sometimes. A heart attack, at the end of the day, we just treat and we move on. But think about it. When you're constantly exposing yourself to traumatic situations, even though they don't necessarily belong to you, the fact that they're so vicarious makes it still attached to you in a very creepy, small way. And then it creates a hardening. And then it creates apathy because you just become a machine. And now let's talk about the system that it's under. Not only are you experiencing all of these things, why don't they provide support? Why doesn't the hospitals or the institution provide support? I'm so glad you asked, because where I'm from, that was a thing at one point. And I'm not talking about one hospital, guys. I'm talking about a system. Yes, there's employee assistant programs, but the problem is that the resources are just not as present. We don't have enough funding for therapists. We don't have enough funding for psychologists. We don't have enough funding for all these things. So the list to see somebody is exceptionally long, and sometimes you have to go private. And where I'm from, nurses' pay it starts off pretty low. Now, some people they can afford it because they go through insurance. Yeah, when I was working in the system and where I was from, I wasn't going under my insurance. I milked my parents' insurance until the last drop. And keep in mind, I'm single, so I don't have somebody else's insurance to rely on. I just have the insurance that I have to take by law, that I pay $200 a month, that gives me barely any coverage for my psychology appointments. It's wild. So not only do you go through all of this because it's a part of the job, we understand that. We understand that we've dissected what is the weight that we can handle based on the department we chose. We're specifically talking about ER. Now let's go under the system. We discussed the part of, okay, there's a lack of resources to help people. I remember once we had a patient that drowned, a 4-year-old, I believe, drowned. And we had a lot of brand new parents. This was years ago. A lot of brand new parents. And my colleague came out, it was a friend of mine. He said he didn't look okay. He was a brand new dad. He did not look okay when that happened. And it rocked me. I saw another parent come out that just came out of maternity leave. It rocked her. My colleague, who I just met at the time, who became my friend, it was her first day, it was her first shift, and she had to translate. She had to translate because the family understood Mandarin, I believe, and she had to be the translator for the family. They just froze because they went back to what they understood best, which was their own language. And they just I don't understand when you speak English. Even though they did speak English, but in that traumatic moment, they couldn't register it. So the colleague translated. We had a psychologist come in and check on the nurses and actually ask questions. That did exist at one point. It doesn't happen as frequently anymore because there's a lack of resources. But keep in mind, there are private resources, but again, it costs extra money, right? Now we're talking about Canadian healthcare. But then after, when we're still sticking to the system, then there's this thing called budget cuts. Then there's budget cuts. Then there's system changes. Then there's new government. Then there's a change of boss. Keep in mind, when I worked in one hospital, I had 5 bosses in 5 years. It was crazy. It was absolutely chaotic. Now, when you have a lot of these changes, systems change too, and those systems can be very hard to adjust to. So eventually what happens is, because of the decline of the Quebec's healthcare system in that period, what happened is that we became machines, continuous machines. And we just did the job. We just made sure our patients stayed alive. And that's the thing that people don't realize anymore about Quebec healthcare, is that the caring aspect is no longer there. It's Quebec health, that's it. Care has been pulled out. When I worked in it, I could not care. Because if I cared too much, I'd crumble in the moment. And this is another reason why people develop hardened hearts and the lack of the fruits of the Spirit when they work. Because the system, with their budget cuts, with the system changes, with everything that's going on politically, that trickles down to us. And in the ER, we are at the forefront of it all. We're the first ones to get it. And then it's the floors. And when I worked in the ER, and when I worked as a manager, I witnessed this time and time again, to the point where the nursing ratios are too much, the workload is too much, and they don't have time to properly precept a new nurse. And it just becomes burnout central because all you're doing is trying to stay alive. And what does trying to stay alive sound like to you? Your fight or flight system. Not only are you trying to keep your patient alive, now you're trying to keep yourself alive. And what do I mean by that? You end up losing yourself in the process when a system and a job takes over your soul. That is why I do not identify anymore as solely a nurse. That is why I have my word. That is why I have God. Because when I identified as a nurse, let's say I lost my license. Guess what? I'm not a nurse anymore. What do I do with myself? You get what I'm saying? What do you do with your, oh, I'll always be a nurse. That is the worst mentality because guess what? When you lose your license, you're not a nurse. But I will always be a human. I will always be a woman. I will always be a daughter of God. I will always be a daughter to my parents. I will always be a sister to my brother. I will always be a friend. I will always be a sister-in-law. I will always be that person. So we have to remember that as much as our job is a calling, as much as being a nurse, a healthcare professional, a doctor, a lawyer, all these people here that are in intense jobs, police officers, paramedics, security guards. Guys, I'm sorry, but there's a special person that deserves to be a security guard, especially where I used to work. They used to wear bulletproof vests, man. You're not just anybody can do the job. Now, do you necessarily call it a calling? That's up to you. I think it is. I think it requires a specific person because if you just get anybody to do the job, you're not going to do it well. Or you may not survive the job to begin with. It may even take you out. Understanding the weight, what are the costs, and can you manage that weight, right? So the calling, and I want to make this very clear. When I say calling, it doesn't mean that your pay should be less because you're called to do it. We have this tendency to believe that because something is calling, because it came from Florence Nightingale. You know how Florence Nightingale founded this whole nursing thing, why I'm here today? You know how Florence Nightingale did all this? She got a word from the Lord. She opened windows, gave them sunlight, fresh air. That was the beginning of it all. Water, the beginning of it all. And now we're here today. Listen, Florence Nightingale is not the most interesting topic to cover in school, but it's the truth. That's what happens. There's a section about her in my women's Bible. Like, I'm not even kidding. I have like 20 Bibles at back of my office. We'll get into that conversation another day. But what Florence Nightingale is literally got a calling from the Lord as a Christian and founded nursing. And we are here today because of it. And guess what you had to have as you started this job? Caring. Caring was, I remember when I was in nursing school, the first course I did was caring and hand washing. Lord, which kind of, in funny ways, it actually makes sense. But anyways, hand washing class was the death of me. It was so, I passed it, obviously, but imagine doing a full course and lab and all this stuff on hand washing. I'm laughing today about it, guys, okay? We end up missing out on the caring aspect. That looks like catastrophe out there, and it is, but I'm safe here. I just noticed that. But yeah. Now, I want to bring in this line here. There is a difference between healthy detachment and the beginning of apathy. Whoo, child. Yes, you have to be careful to not care as much. And that was my mistake at the beginning. I'm giving you the blueprint because I missed out on it early on, and I don't want you to do that today. I don't want you to fall into the trap that I fell in. God knows how he made me. I don't want you to fall into the trap that I fell in back in the day. I really don't. The trap that I fell in was that in order for you to care for patients, you cannot care. That was the trap. And the reason why it's such a trap, because it stops, let's go back here to Galatians 5. It stops the fruit of the Spirit from actually coming out to actually performing miracles in people. Well, miracles? Why do you say miracles, Melanie? Listen, do you know how many people I see in the hospital every single day that I work that have so little faith in healing? They're like, oh, I'm never gonna get well. Oh, this sucks. Oh, and they're miserable. And I'm not complaining about it. I want to make this clear. I'm not complaining. There's a lot of people that have misery in their illnesses. Misery. And this is not just you being like, I'm going to be nice. No, this is you carrying the energy, carrying the spirit with you. And that when you walk into the room, it's like, oh, this person feels different. I want to be around them. In 2026, this is a very hard thing to carry around with you guys. This is really, really hard thing to carry. And when Florence Nightingale first did this, guess what? She knew her word. The fruit of the Spirit was a part of it. And we've lost it all in the job. We've lost it, especially as we go down. Because guess what? Another thing that we don't talk about is that when something is your calling or when something is meant for you, if you don't guard your heart, your calling will be your curse. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Your calling will be your curse. I can guarantee you that. So here's the next part of the line that I want to bring up. So I'm going to rephrase it. So there is a difference between healthy detachment and the beginning of apathy. I crossed the line slowly without a clear moment I can point to. On the outside of the clinical care didn't change. I got better at providing care. I got better at reacting quickly. My critical thinking got better. I became a great machine. But it was the interior that was quietly going somewhere else to die. I learned very quickly on the job that my problems are not important as this one. Now, keep in mind, at that era of my life, at 21 years old, doing CPR like that and seeing patients very, very sick, constantly coming in, one of the things that I realized is that, yeah, my problems are not as big because at that period of my life, I was a little bit high strung. Let's put it that way. I was a little bit too nervous. I was a little bit, I'm going to call it what it is. I was selfish in that time period. My problems are my problems. And oh my God, I got to stop. That was the person I was. And the more that I worked in the ER, the more that I actually healed it, but then I overdid it. You got to find that boundary that maybe I need to be a little bit more grateful versus I can't care as much. Two very different things. I learned how to be grateful for what I had. I learned how to stop being a paranoiac about the things that didn't matter. So I'm teaching you things that, child, I needed to learn a long time ago, that I'm still, even as I'm saved right now, I still need to learn, okay? This is another really good statement, but here's the trap. The system rewarded me for being less human, and I didn't know what was happening because I was being called excellent while it happened. That's the problem. I think that, yes, I had managers and people tell me, you're doing a great job, but are you okay? Did you deal with this okay? Yeah, I'm not saying I had zero support. Like I had managers that were really great. I think what the issue wasn't the fact that they didn't care enough. I think the issue was they didn't know how to translate this. And I think I finally found the words for it to say this, but because of the amount of vicarious challenges that they've experienced, or even their own traumas that they experienced in the workplace, they themselves struggled with finding out how to balance the weight and the cost and understanding what to do with that weight to its full capacity. So I know many nurses that have gotten very sick that cannot work anymore, and they were young. Cancers, heart attacks, strokes, brain aneurysms. A lot of ER nurses specifically that I know who have went through that. And there's Crohn's, all these types of issues, PCOS, and you can't say that it's not related to the stress of the job. You can't say that it's because, oh, it's just my comorbidities, or it's just my family history, or it's just that. Here's the thing. In 2026, when we have access to so much knowledge on how to stay healthy, but yet we're not, is a very scary thing. Healthcare professionals are advocating for health, and yet we have a hard time being healthy. Not because we choose to eat McDonald's sometimes, but just the fact that we have stress defiles our holy temple. Stress is the core epicenter to leading us to illness. Our nervous system gets completely dysregulated, and we are unable to properly manage our nervous system, then we are leading ourselves down to chronic illness land. 2022, I just started the job as a hospital manager. I transferred out of the ER. My body said enough is enough. And I transferred out as a hospital manager. I realized that I had more time for myself. Yes, the job was a lot more mentally demanding, but the physical demanding of it was nowhere near as working in an ER. So I had the energy and the ability to book my appointments for my doctors and whatever. So I worked on the 5 pillars of my life. And the first one I tackled was health, mental and physical health, which is actually the first 2. And as I was going through that, I realized that my doctor was like, you are in line of getting a heart attack at 45 because I take care of your parents as well. And I know your mom and dad's blood. This is not going to go well if you continue down this line. At that time, I was 30 years old. 30 years old. And I was in line to have a heart attack at 45. I was already developing PCOS. I had fertility issues. I was gaining weight like a mad person. I was gaining weight 10 pounds a month. How does that make sense? And what my doctor says, you gotta regulate your stress. Stress management is gonna be your key. I can put you on all the meds possible that can give you everything you want. But if you don't manage your stress, you are not gonna make it. And voila, that is exactly what I had to do. I stuck into this job as manager because it was actually, for me, not everyone's like that, but for me, I went as manager. That was actually less of a stress, funny enough, physically and mentally. And my body thanked me for it. Thanked me for it in many, many, many ways. That's a whole other episode in itself of just managing that. How that it can dysregulate us and lead us into illness. Like stress, the nervous system, and the foundation of faith and how that can tie together. It's actually really makes a huge, huge difference because as you could, I lost 100 pounds because of regulating my stress and of course medication, but 100 pounds over a very healthy time period. So that's very important. But I want to also mention this statement here. Your nervous system is supposed to go from high alert back down to baseline after a crisis. But after years of working in the ER, mine stopped going all the way back down. Let's say the starting point for a nervous system to stay healthy is like this, at this level here. Mine was always here. And then it would go there, and then it would go there. It would never touch here. And because of that, high cortisol, chronic illness was in line. Metabolic diseases, the list goes on. And this created PCOS and insulin resistance in me. And keep in mind, this is not debilitating diseases, guys. I understand that they're not debilitating, but it's something that I have to deal with every single day. Now, because I didn't regulate my stress, because I didn't unlearn the things that made me so apathetic, I think one of the things that we have to stop and realize and encounter that our hearts need to be postured to care again. Because sometimes we lack caring in our relationships after dealing with all of this. This is as soon as we are accountable for the weight of the job that we signed up for, and we understand how to manage it by not letting our emotions just slip under the rug, making sure that we take care of the 5 pillars of our life as best as we can. So that is mental health, physical health, relationships, career, finance, such as setting boundaries. I want to be very clear about that. Setting proper boundaries. Don't always say yes to overtime. And faith. You can work on all of the things, but here's the secret sauce. You can work on the first 4 pillars, but if you do not end in faith, you're leaning on your own understanding. Proverbs 3 verses 5-7. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for listening. May God be with you, bless you, and may his face shine upon you. May he give you all the peace. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. If you are interested in with me, you can go on nomadicnursenetwork.com. You can also email us, follow us on all social media handles at Melanie J. Bulleris and also at Nomadic Nurse Net or Nomadic Nurse Network. We're here to build community. We're here for connect, care, and change. Bye.